Have you ever woken up, walked out to your garden with a cup of coffee, and found your beautiful green tomato plants suddenly covered in ugly black spots? It is a gardener's worst nightmare. You did everything right. You watered them, you fed them, you talked to them. But almost overnight, your entire harvest turns into a rotting, smelly mess. This is the devastating work of late blight caused by a pathogen called Phytophthora. But here is the million-dollar question. Where did it come from? It does not just fall from the sky by magic. It has to hide somewhere during the cold, harsh winter, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Today we are going to uncover the absolute truth about where Phytophthora hides. I am going to reveal 20 surprising and frankly shocking places this killer is lurking in your very own backyard right now. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will look at your garden tools, your soil, and even your neighbours in a completely different way. So, are you ready to become a garden detective and save your tomatoes this year? Let us find out who is brave enough to face the facts. Drop a comment right now and tell me, have you ever lost a crop to the dreaded blight? Before we start hunting down the hiding spots, we need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. The word Phytophthora literally translates from Greek as plant destroyer, and it truly earns that name. It is most famous for causing the horrific Irish potato famine in the 1840s, changing the course of history forever. Now, here is a fascinating fact that surprises most people. Phytophthora is not actually a fungus. Even though it looks and acts like a fungus, biologists classify it as an oomycete, or a water mold. This is a crucial piece of the puzzle. Because it is a water mold, it absolutely loves moisture. It needs wet leaves, high humidity, and damp environments to thrive and multiply. It travels through tiny spores that swim in water drops or blow in the wind. Understanding that this pathogen is fundamentally tied to water and moisture is your first weapon in defeating it. It is sneaky, it is highly adaptive, and it is a master of survival. So, let us expose its secrets and shine a light on its top 20 favourite hiding places. Let us start with the most obvious but misunderstood hiding spot, the soil in your garden. Many gardeners believe a simple myth. They think that a harsh, freezing winter will magically wipe out all garden diseases. But Phytophthora is incredibly smart. It produces special thick-walled survival structures called oospores. These tiny armoured tanks can survive freezing temperatures. They can survive heavy snow. They can even survive droughts. They just wait in the dirt for the perfect conditions to return. Imagine you had a bad case of blight last year. You pulled up the dead plants and thought the problem was gone. But millions of these invisible oospores fell onto the soil. They are sitting there right now. When spring arrives and the ground warms up, they wake up. If you plant your fresh, healthy tomatoes in that exact same spot, you are placing them directly into a minefield. The rain will splash the infected soil onto the lower leaves of your new plants. Boom! The infection starts all over again. This is why crop rotation is not just a fancy farming term. It is a vital defense strategy for your backyard. Moving your plants away from last year's soil forces the pathogen to starve over time. Leaving your plants in infected soil is a guaranteed recipe for disaster. Now, let us talk about the zombie potatoes left behind in your garden. This is a massive blind spot for many people. When you harvest your potato crop in the fall, it is almost impossible to find every single tuber. A tiny potato, no bigger than a marble, often gets left behind deep in the dirt. You might think this is harmless, but if your garden had any late blight during the season, that little potato is a ticking time bomb. Phytophthora needs living plant tissue to survive long term. That leftover potato is the perfect underground bunker. The pathogen stays alive inside the fleshy tuber all winter long, protected from the frost by the thick soil above it. Come spring, that little tuber sprouts. It pushes a green shoot up through the soil. This is called a volunteer potato. It looks like a free bonus plant, but it is actually a Trojan horse. As soon as the leaves emerge, the pathogen moves up the stem. The wind picks up the spores and blows them right onto your newly planted, expensive tomato seedlings. A common myth is that you only need to worry about the plants you actually planted. The truth is, the plants you did not intend to grow are often the most dangerous. You must dig through your beds meticulously to remove them. Moving on to a place that looks entirely innocent: dried plant debris. At the end of the gardening season, it is very tempting to just let the dead vines, shriveled leaves, and fallen stems rot naturally on the ground. It feels like you are returning nutrients to the earth. But if those plants were infected with blight, you are actually creating a luxury hotel for the pathogen. Phytophthora spores can stick around in the drying tissue of tomato and potato plants for a surprisingly long time. Imagine a single dried tomato leaf hidden under a layer of fresh autumn leaves. It acts like a protective blanket. The moisture from the winter snow keeps the leaf just damp enough for the spores to remain viable. When the warm spring rains arrive, those spores reactivate. They splash up onto the lowest branches of your new garden. This completely shatters the myth that dead plants are always safe plants. A diseased plant does not lose its disease just because it turns brown and crispy. Garden hygiene is critical. You must treat infected vines like hazardous waste. Do not leave them lying around the borders of your garden. You need to gather every single piece of infected debris, bag it up, and throw it in the household trash. Here is a hiding spot that will make greenhouse owners cringe: the actual structure of your greenhouse. We buy greenhouses to protect our plants, right? But ironically, they can become the ultimate breeding ground for Phytophthora. Think about the inside of a greenhouse. It is warm, it is enclosed, and most importantly, it is highly humid. Water condenses on the ceiling and drips down the walls. This water mold absolutely loves that. Spores can easily become trapped in the tiny crevices of wooden frames, aluminium joints, or the microscopic scratches on polycarbonate panels. If you had an outbreak of blight inside your greenhouse last summer, the spores are still clinging to the walls. You might plant brand new seeds in fresh potting soil next spring, thinking you are safe. But as soon as the humidity rises, the condensation drips from the infected ceiling directly onto your pristine seedlings. It is like raining disease. The myth here is that a greenhouse is a sterile environment. It is far from it unless you clean it. You need to scrub the walls, the glass, and the frames with a mild bleach or dedicated greenhouse disinfectant before every new season. Your greenhouse should be a sanctuary, not a gas chamber for your tomatoes. Let us talk about something you hold in your hands every single day: your garden tools. Your favourite shovel, your trusty pruners, and that old hoe you inherited from your grandfather. These tools are the ultimate mechanical vectors for disease. Let us say you are digging up a blighted potato plant. The wet, infected soil sticks to the blade of your shovel. Later that afternoon, you take that exact same shovel and dig a nice hole to plant a healthy, expensive tomato seedling you just bought. Congratulations! You just personally delivered Phytophthora directly to the root zone of your new plant. The same goes for pruning shears. You snip off a diseased branch and then move down the row, snipping healthy branches to improve airflow. You are acting like a surgeon using a dirty scalpel. There is a dangerous myth that soil is just soil, and dirt on tools does not matter. But in the microscopic world, that dirt is loaded with invisible enemies. You have to clean your tools. Keep a bucket of soapy water or rubbing alcohol in the garden. Wipe down your pruners between cuts. Hose off your shovels after digging in a diseased bed. Treat your tools with respect, and they will not betray your garden. Have you ever thought about the things holding your plants up? The wooden stakes, the bamboo canes, the metal cages, and even the soft fabric ties you use to keep your tomatoes off the ground. These are prime real estate for Phytophthora. Wooden stakes are especially dangerous because wood is porous. It absorbs water and it absorbs spores. When a diseased tomato vine is tightly tied to a wooden stake, The spores transfer directly into the grain of the wood. When the season is over, you pull the stakes out and store them in your shed. You might think the winter will dry them out and kill the mold, but remember, this is a water mold with heavy armor. The spores hide deep inside the wood fibers. The next year, you pound that same stake into the ground and tie a fresh, innocent seedling to it. As soon as it rains, the wood gets wet, the spores wake up, and they infect the new plant right where the tie touches the stem. You must stop recycling infected materials. If a plant dies from blight, the cheap wooden stake or the twine holding it needs to go in the garbage too. Metal cages are safer, but only if you scrub them down with a disinfectant solution before using them again. Now we step outside the garden bed and look at the wild invaders. Weeds. But not just any weeds. We are talking about weeds that belong to the nightshade family, the exact same family as tomatoes and potatoes. Plants like bittersweet nightshade, climbing nightshade, or horse nettle are wild cousins of your garden vegetables. And Phytophthora loves family gatherings. You might have a perfectly clean garden bed. You rotated your crops. You bought clean soil. But just 5 feet away, growing wild along your fence line, is a patch of bittersweet nightshade. This weed acts as a stealthy reservoir for the disease. It catches the blight, but because it is a tough wild weed, it might not die completely. It just harbours the fungus on its leaves. Every time the wind blows, or a heavy rainstorm rolls through, spores are launched from the wild weeds directly into your pristine garden. The myth here is that weeds only steal water and nutrients. The dark truth is that specific weeds actively harbour the pathogens that kill your crops. You must become a weed identifier. Learn what wild nightshades look like in your region. If you find them near your vegetable garden, eradicate them immediately. They are sleeper agents waiting to ruin your harvest. Let us discuss a place that breaks many organic gardeners' hearts, the beloved compost pile. We are taught that composting is the ultimate green practice. You take your garden waste, let it rot, and turn it into black gold. So, when your tomato plants get hit by blight, your first instinct is to throw them right onto the compost heap. This is a massive mistake. Here is the reality. For a compost pile to completely destroy Phytophthora spores, it needs to be a hot compost pile. We are talking about sustained temperatures of over 140 degrees Fahrenheit for several days, all the way through the centre of the pile. Most backyard compost bins never get anywhere near that hot. They are cold composts. The organic matter breaks down slowly over time. If you put blighted leaves into a cold compost pile, the spores do not die. They just mingle with the new soil you are creating. 6 months later, you proudly spread this homemade compost around your new vegetables, completely unaware that you are spreading pure disease. It is a heartbreaking myth that all compost is magically pure. Never ever compost blighted plant material. Burn it if your local laws allow it, or bag it and send it to the landfill. Water is the lifeblood of any garden, but it is also the chosen transport system for Phytophthora. Let us look at your water sources, specifically rain barrels and open irrigation tanks. Harvesting rainwater is a fantastic, eco-friendly practice, but you have to be careful. Phytophthora produces a specific type of spore called a zoospore. These incredible microscopic structures actually have little tails called flagella. They can literally swim through water like tiny tadpoles. Imagine an infected leaf from a tall tree or a neighbouring garden blows onto the roof of your house. The rain washes the spores down your gutters and directly into your rain barrel. Because the water is cool and dark, the zoospores survive beautifully. A few days later, you dip your watering can into the barrel and give your tomato seedlings a nice, refreshing drink. You have just poured millions of swimming pathogens directly onto the leaves and roots of your plants. This is not to say you should stop using rain barrels. The myth is that collected rainwater is perfectly sterile. You need to keep your rain barrels covered with tight, fine mesh screens to prevent debris from falling in. Try to water at the base of the plant, not over the leaves, to minimize the risk. Here is a hiding place that you actually pay money for. Store-bought seedlings. Every spring, millions of gardeners flock to big box stores and local nurseries to buy little tomato and potato plants. They look incredibly green, lush, and healthy, but nurseries are mass production facilities. Thousands of plants are packed closely together, watered from above, and kept in humid greenhouses. This is the perfect storm for a blight outbreak. Sometimes, a batch of seedlings gets infected just days before they are shipped to the store. The plants do not show any black spots or fuzzy mold yet. They are in the incubation period. You buy a beautiful 6-pack of tomatoes, bring them home, and plant them in your clean garden. A week later, the spots appear. You blame your soil or the rain, but the truth is, you bought the disease. These seedlings acted as a Trojan horse. There is a common myth that if a plant is sold in a store, it is guaranteed to be disease-free. This is false. You must inspect every plant carefully. Look at the lower leaves. Check the stems for brown streaks. If you want absolute control, the safest route is starting your own plants from clean seeds indoors. Let us talk about a hiding spot you have zero control over. Your neighbours. You can be the most meticulous gardener in the world. You clean your tools, rotate your crops, and destroy your weeds. But Phytophthora is an airborne menace. The spores are so light and tiny that they can easily be picked up by the wind and carried for miles. If your neighbour, living 3 houses down, has a massive outbreak of late blight and does absolutely nothing about it, their garden becomes a factory producing billions of spores. When a storm rolls in, the wind lifts those spores into the air, carries them right over the fences and drops them gently onto your plants. This is especially true during cool, cloudy and wet weather. The myth is that your garden is an isolated island. It is not. You are part of a larger agricultural ecosystem. While you cannot go and forcefully rip up your neighbour's plants, you can practice defensive gardening. Talk to your neighbours about blight. Share your knowledge. And in your own yard, make sure your plants have plenty of space between them. Good air circulation allows leaves to dry out faster, making it much harder for those wind-blown spores to take hold. Have you ever considered that the disease might be hiding right on you? Your gardening clothing and your shoes are fantastic transportation networks for microscopic pests. Picture this. You walk through a muddy, wet garden bed where your potatoes are rotting from blight. The mud sticks deep into the treads of your rubber boots. The wet leaves brush against the knees of your favourite gardening jeans. You finish your work, take off your boots on the porch, and leave your pants in the laundry basket. A few days later, the sun comes out. You put those same dirty boots back on and put on the same unwashed jeans and walk out to check on a completely different, healthy section of your garden. As you walk, the dried mud flakes off your boots and the spores brush off your pants, landing right in the new bed. You are the taxi driver for the fungus. The myth is that garden dirt is harmless. You have to treat disease outbreaks like a contamination zone. If you are dealing with blighted plants, wash your clothes immediately in hot water. Hose down your boots and scrub the treads with soapy water. Do not let your own wardrobe become the enemy. Now we are going to look incredibly close. We are looking inside the seeds themselves. Most people think of seeds as perfect, pure beginnings. But some diseases, including certain strains of Phytophthora, can actually be seed-borne. This is more common with tomatoes than potatoes. When a tomato fruit gets infected with late blight, the pathogen does not just rot the skin, it penetrates deep into the flesh, right into the gel that surrounds the seeds. If someone saves seeds from that diseased fruit without properly fermenting and disinfecting them, the pathogen dries onto the seed coat. The next spring, you plant that seed. As the seed absorbs water to germinate, the pathogen wakes up at the exact same time. It infects the tiny seedling before it even breaks the surface of the soil. The myth among many amateur seed savers is that as long as the seed looks clean and dry, it is safe. This is extremely dangerous. You should never save seeds from a plant that suffered from late blight. Always buy your seeds from reputable, certified, disease-free sources. The few dollars you save by keeping bad seeds will cost you your entire harvest later. Let us talk about a surprising hiding spot, the unexpected volunteer tomato plant. We talked about volunteer potatoes earlier, but tomatoes do this too. Often, a cherry tomato falls to the ground in late summer and gets buried in the mulch. The fruit rots, but the seeds survive the winter. Next spring, a tiny, cute tomato plant pops up in the middle of your cucumber bed. Many gardeners leave them because they feel like a free gift from nature. But here is the problem. That seed came from a plant that was likely exposed to the diseases of late summer. More importantly, it is growing in soil that has not been rotated. It sprouts early, often before you have even planted your main crop. If the blight pathogen is in the soil, this volunteer plant catches it first. It acts as an early warning system, but also as an early incubator. By the time your main tomato crop is hitting its stride, the volunteer plant is already shedding billions of spores. It is tough love, but you must be ruthless with volunteer tomatoes. Pull them out immediately. Do not let a rogue plant jeopardize your carefully planned garden layout. Another place Phytophthora can hide is right in your mulch. Mulching is generally a fantastic gardening practice. It keeps the soil moist and suppresses weeds. But you have to know where your mulch came from. Many gardeners buy bales of straw or hay from local farmers to use as mulch around their tomatoes. But what if that farmer grew potatoes in that exact same field the year before? What if those potatoes had late blight? The pathogen can easily survive in the dried stalks and soil dust mixed into that hay bale. You bring the bale home, spread it thick around your precious plants, and water it in. You have just created a moist, perfectly incubated layer of diseased material right at the base of your plants. This destroys the myth that all organic matter is automatically safe. You must trace the source of your materials. If you use straw, try to ensure it comes from a clean source, or use alternatives like shredded leaves from your own healthy trees or clean pine needles. Always be suspicious of organic matter coming from unknown agricultural fields. Let us look at a living, moving hiding spot. Garden pests and insects. We normally hate bugs because they chew holes in our leaves or suck the sap from the stems. But insects play a much darker role when it comes to late blight. They act as mechanical carriers. Imagine a cluster of aphids or a potato beetle crawling over a tomato leaf that is covered in fuzzy white Phytophthora spores. The tiny, sticky spores attach to the insect's legs, wings, and body. Then, the insect decides to fly or crawl over to a perfectly healthy plant 3 rows away. As it walks across the clean leaf, it leaves a trail of invisible spores behind. When the dew falls that night, the spores germinate. You might be spraying fungicides to stop the blight, but if you ignore the insect population, the bugs will constantly spread the disease behind your back. The myth is that diseases and pests are 2 completely separate problems. In reality, they work together as a tag team to destroy your garden. Keeping insect populations under control is a crucial step in slowing down the spread of fungal and water mold infections. Here is a hiding spot that can cost you a lot of money and ruin your garden for years. Imported topsoil. Every spring, people decide to build new raised beds. They order a massive dump truck full of beautiful, dark, rich topsoil from a local landscaping company. It looks amazing. But where did that soil come from? Often, commercial topsoil is scraped from old agricultural fields, construction sites, or mixed with bulk municipal compost. If the field it came from had a history of potato or tomato farming with heavy blight pressure, that soil is absolutely loaded with oospores. You shovel it into your brand new cedar raised beds, plant your vegetables, and within weeks, everything is dying from blight. You are left scratching your head because the beds are brand new. The heartbreaking myth is that purchased soil is pure and sterile. bulk topsoil is highly unpredictable. If you are buying soil in bulk, ask the supplier exactly where it came from and what it is mixed with. If they cannot give you a straight answer, you are taking a massive gamble. Sometimes it is safer to buy bagged soil from reputable brands for your sensitive nightshade crops. Let us talk about a hiding spot that is becoming more common every single year: the mild winter environment. We used to rely on deep freezes to slow down many garden pests and diseases. Phytophthora spores can survive freezing, but extreme, prolonged cold does reduce their numbers. However, with changing weather patterns, many regions are experiencing much milder winters. The ground barely freezes, or it thaws out very quickly. This creates a cozy, insulated environment for the pathogen. Without the deep freeze to kill off the weak spores or destroy the wild weed hosts completely, a much larger population of the pathogen survives until spring. The disease starts its life cycle earlier and with much more aggressive force. The myth that winter will solve your garden problems is fading fast. You can no longer rely on the weather to be your primary fungicide. You have to be proactive. Because the winters are milder, your garden cleanup in the fall must be absolutely flawless. Leaving debris out over a mild winter is practically begging for a massive blight outbreak the following spring. One of the most terrifying hiding spots for Phytophthora is the asymptomatic phase on the plant itself. This is when the disease is hiding in plain sight. Phytophthora has an incubation period. From the moment a spore lands on a wet leaf and penetrates the plant tissue, it can take anywhere from 3 to 7 days for the first black spots to actually appear. During this time, the tomato plant looks perfectly green, incredibly healthy and entirely vibrant. But inside, the pathogen is multiplying rapidly, spreading its threads through the plant's vascular system. You might walk through your garden, admire your beautiful plants, and decide not to apply any preventative organic sprays because everything looks fine. 2 days later, a rainstorm hits, the humidity spikes, and suddenly the entire plant collapses in a heap of black slime. The myth is that you only need to treat plants when you see the disease. By the time you see late blight, it is usually too late. The secret to beating it is understanding that it hides invisibly. You must use preventative measures like copper sprays or biological fungicides before you see a single spot, especially when the weather forecast calls for cool, wet conditions. Finally, let us look at the hiding spot created by bad habits: the failed crop rotation. We touched on soil earlier, but this is about the layout of your entire garden. Let us say you have a small garden and you really love tomatoes. So you plant tomatoes in bed A. They get a little blight. Next year, you know you should rotate, so you plant them in bed B, which is right next to bed A. You think you are safe, but the spores easily wash or blow from bed A to bed B. True crop rotation requires distance and time. The golden rule is the 3-year rule. Tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants and peppers should not be planted in the same spot or immediately adjacent spots for at least 3 full years. This starves the pathogen. It forces the resting spores to wake up, find no suitable food and die off. The stubborn myth is that moving a plant 2 feet to the left is a crop rotation. It is not. You have to treat the whole nightshade family as one single crop. Plan your garden map on paper. Keep good records. If you break the rotation rules, you are providing a permanent, luxurious home for Phytophthora year after year. So, there you have it. The shocking truth is that Phytophthora is not some magical curse that falls out of a clear blue sky. It is a highly evolved, brilliant survivalist that hides in your soil, sleeps inside leftover potatoes, clings to your garden tools, and even hitches a ride on your favourite gardening boots. The real turning point in your gardening journey happens right now. Once you realise that the enemy is hiding in plain sight, you take the power back. You are no longer a victim to the weather or bad luck. By cleaning your tools, pulling those volunteer plants, practicing strict 3-year crop rotation, and destroying wild nightshade weeds, You are dismantling the pathogen's hiding spots one by one. The consequences of ignoring these steps are ruined harvests and heartbreaking losses. But the reward for vigilance is a massive, healthy crop of red, juicy tomatoes and perfect potatoes. I hope this deep dive has opened your eyes to the secret life of garden diseases. If you found this information surprising and helpful, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Do not forget to subscribe so you never miss out on our advanced gardening secrets. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these hiding spots surprised you the most, and what is your #1 strategy for fighting blight in your yard? Let us get a conversation going in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and happy blight-free gardening!